Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the Standing Room Only podcast. I'm Goose. As always, I'm here with Healy. Episode number 64. This week, we are going to target and talk about the blowout in Super Bowl 55. Tom Brady bringing home his 7th Super Bowl ring. We are going to talk about MLB as well. Trevor Bauer, huge signing. Some other transactions around the league. And then we're going to finish with the NBA and their rumor of having an all-star game and how upset a lot of the all-stars are about having to possibly play. So let's go ahead and get started.
As always, you can follow us on social media at SROnlyPod. You could follow our personal pages. Mine is at the Healy6.
I am iGoose with 4 O's, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. Go ahead and hit that follow button.
So yeah, Super Bowl 55. Didn't go how we planned it in the slightest. 1, with our predictions, and 2, having an actual good game. We thought it was going to be a shootout the whole way through, and we also both picked the Chiefs to win.
Yep.
Are we going to go back on our prediction? No. Hindsight's 2020. It's just, it is hilarious to see Twitter being like, guys, the Chiefs, they didn't have an O-line. Like, what were you thinking? It's like, yeah, we kind of knew that they weren't going to have an O-line, but we thought their offense was still quick enough to where Mahomes was going to get the ball to the right guys and actually make the plays.
That was the expectation. The expectation was Tampa was going to bring it like they did in the last few games, as they did against the Saints, against Green Bay. They hit Rodgers, and we knew the big factor going into this game was going to be, will the Bucs get to Mahomes? Not only did they get to Mahomes, he was hurried a Super Bowl record 29 times. To put that in comparison, Tom Brady was hurried 4 times, which is the least amount he has ever been hurried in a Super Bowl that he's been in, out of 10 at this point. So it is, I mean, it made a huge difference, but at the same time, the Pat Mahomes and this Kansas City Chiefs offense that, I mean, the whole league that any NFL fan raves about is how fast they are. Pat Mahomes, it did not matter. There were some dropped passes, but they just got to him and they crushed him. They crushed everybody on the field. Yeah, like you said, we can't go back on the predictions. And Tom Brady, once again, is making us bite our tongue for ever doubting him in a Super Bowl. Unless your name is Eli Manning, it seems like you don't really have a chance against him. What were some of your takeaways? We watched it together. Obviously, I'm sure just like everybody else that watched it, they were disappointed. I thought it was going to be a shootout. I expected Tampa to do what they did offensively, but I did not expect Mahomes and the Chiefs to do what they did offensively. I think that was the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, there are some people that were bashing Mahomes as well, and he doesn't deserve it. He played to the best of his ability. He had the most, I think it was this season, he had the most scramble yards behind the line of scrimmage before throwing passes out of everyone. 496 yards of just running around in the backfield. That is a lot.
That's too much.
He got hurried. He had to move out of the way. And also, he kind of got hurt from his players not catching the ball. Hit Tyreek Hill right in the face. Travis Kelce got a ball one time, and he dropped it. Both of these were near or in the end zone.
Yeah.
Like, that could have been 14 points going the other way. But instead, these guys, when they finally were able to make the plays, they were unable to. They were unable to finish the job and made Pat look bad in the media sense. The defense, we knew the Chiefs' defense was going to struggle, or comparatively to the Tampa Bay, but man, Tampa, they only had to rush 3 or 4 all game, and they were able to get to Mahomes all day long. Leonard Fournette, the running backs were pretty big for Tampa Bay. Leonard Fournette had a couple big runs.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette is proving, basically saying, hey, thanks for cutting me. I think he posted on Twitter or somewhere on one of his social medias of him getting cut. Like, there was the actual announcement that he got cut, because I think he found out from social media, and it was a side-by-side picture of him getting cut, and then Leonard Fournette, Super Bowl champion. I think that's awesome, because obviously he was a great running back in college at LSU. He wasn't bad with Jacksonville. He wasn't a bad... I mean, granted, we do talk about it all the time where running backs, they're kind of like a dime a dozen. You can get, a good running back anywhere at any given point, and after 4 years, they dump him off. Hell of a game. Ronald Jones had a great game. Between the two of them, they rushed for almost 150 yards. Mm-hmm. They controlled the game, every aspect of the game. It was just Tampa's game from the get-go. Pat Mahomes does not deserve the criticism. I understand, you guys, he's always in the media. He is probably the next child star of the NFL, whatever you want to call him, their prized possession, as Tom Brady has been. But at the end of the day, when you're pressured that much, when guys are dropping passes, they ran the ball pretty well. But, I mean, when you're playing from behind, you can't run the ball that much. Mm-hmm. He did what he could. There was a throw, I remember. He was getting hit. And on the way down, through one of the best spiral passes I've ever seen, that got dropped in the end zone.
Yeah, he was, like, parallel to the ground.
Yeah, and that's something you see in Madden. That's literally something you see in a video game. The ball was not wobbly at all. I mean, it was a perfect spiral pass that got dropped. There was another drop. I forgot who it was. There was another big drop down in the red zone. So, I mean, any of those that were just caught, any one of those 2 or 3 that were caught, it would be a different game. The momentum changes. Instead of settling for the field goal, which obviously they kicked 3 field goals the whole time, and also this is the first time they haven't scored a touchdown all season. It would have been a completely different ball game. Tom Brady wins the MVP. Do I think Tom Brady deserved MVP? Because of who he is and because he did manage the game, sure. But I felt like Tom Brady was able to benefit on the success of the defense. The Chiefs' defense was on the field quite a bit. I still think it could have gone to anybody on the field. It could have gone to Fournette, who had a good game. It could have went to Gronk, who had a hell of a game.
Yeah.
He had an incredible game.
2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns, quick. And, I mean, that right there was jumped out to a huge lead. It could have went to Devin White defensively, who had like 13 tackles. He had an interception in the fourth quarter. He was all over the field, and we saw it the last few games as well. Sometimes I feel like you got to give the Super Bowl MVP to the guy who literally performs night in and night out throughout the playoffs and in the big game. Tom Brady, nonetheless, can't take it away from him. Definitely well-deserved. 7th Super Bowl.
Most all-time. No franchise has as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady does.
That's nuts. That's unheard of. That's like somebody with baseball. Maybe not. Baseball's a little bit different because baseball's been around a little bit longer. World Series versus Super Bowl era. But, I mean, just something like that to think about is nuts. In a game of football where not a lot of guys last till they're 40. He's 44, 45 doing it, and he's coming back. He's coming back.
Yeah. Fun fact, Calvin Johnson came into the league when Tom Brady was 30 years old. He played through his career, and he's a Hall of Famer.
Already.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have to wait 5 years after you retire. Hall of Famer, which we could talk about the Hall of Fame in a little bit as well. But from a game perspective, definitely a little disappointing from the fan side. There are some comments of it being the most boring Super Bowl ever. No, we've seen the Seahawks-Broncos. That was a blowout immediately. Saw the Rams and the Patriots, which you could call it a defensive battle. Both offenses were just garbage. So
horrible.
Not necessarily on that, but Super Bowl 55's in the books. Tom Brady had a great time today. They're out on boats.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw Tom Brady threw the Lombardi trophy to Gronk.
Over the water.
From boat to boat.
That was high. I mean, at that point, that's like when you win 7 titles, you can do that. You can do whatever you want. I can only imagine what the Lombardi trophy or any other trophy has gone through. But yeah, they were out partying. Gronk showed up with the water. Surprise, surprise, right? That didn't last very long. Eventually that switched. Tom Brady is shown walking away after the boat being carried off by, not necessarily carried off, but being guided back to the car, the team bus, whatever it was. He definitely had a few cocktails, if you will. It's hot out there. But good for him. Good for him. Well-deserved. He went to a team where they had a lot of potential, a lot of weapons. And I know the biggest argument has always been, is it Tom Brady or is it the Patriots system? Well, he won it without the Patriots. He won it without Bill Belichick. He did win it with a great coaching staff.
Yeah.
Todd Bowles, they have...
they had a great defense.
Great defense, team around
but still.
He led the team. They were in a wild card team who could have easily had given up. They won against the Saints, which the first half of that Saints game was a toss-up. It was the second half that they shut down Breeze and that Saints offense. Green Bay, it's a touchy subject. Green Bay easily could have, they came back in that game. That was a battle. Brady, 3 interceptions, back-to-back-to-back drives. Obviously, Packers didn't execute on a couple of those drives. So, who steps up? Brady's defense. But either way, at the end of the day, they had the complete team. They are the best team in the NFL right now, clearly. They shut down Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. And Brady is proving to Bill Belichick, I don't need you. I don't need you, Robert Kraft. I love you and I respect you, and everything we have is solidified as the greatest dynasty. But I am that puzzle piece. I'm the glue piece for that, clearly. So I tip my hat to you, Mr. Tom Brady.
Yeah, and as a reminder, this team didn't necessarily change too much from this year to last year. They had Jameis Winston. Was it last year or 2 years ago?
Last year they had Jameis, yeah. They had basically the same team minus Antonio Brown, minus Gronk, and the defense was actually pretty solid last year. It was a solid. They won.
No Anton Winfield Jr., but still, they had a pretty solid team.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston threw like 30 picks or something. He threw a lot of yards, and they were 7-9.
Yeah.
So.
And they turned it around, and they went 11-5 this year, if I'm not mistaken. Wildcard team. The only reason why they didn't win the division is because the Saints were so good in the regular season. And
they lost twice to them.
They lost twice. Yeah, that was the biggest thing, too, is the Saints go into this with this swagger, hey, we beat up on you. We beat up on you. The Chiefs, too. Tyreek Hill. Let's not forget, in the regular season, had over 200 receiving yards in the first quarter. 200 receiving yards. I remember I played him in my FanDuel, and I was like, well, I'm about to cash out. And he did the peace sign. I think we all saw it already at this point on social media. Antoine Winfield gets his interception, or it was an interception or a huge stop.
It was a fourth down stop.
It was a fourth down stop. And he finally got his revenge. He gave the peace sign back. Pretty sure he got flagged for it, which is a little unnecessary. We saw some unnecessary flags in this game. We saw I don't want to say it was one-sided, but it was heavily in favor of the Bucs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this one did not determine the game. The Chiefs just could not match up with the Bucs at all on either side of the ball.
This is the first time ever that a wild card team won with home field advantage. They didn't have home field advantage until the Super Bowl because they're the only team ever to play in the Super Bowl at their own stadium.
That's nuts.
Dude, I think I was telling you, I wish Kansas did not lose to the Raiders. They would have been undefeated. This would have been Brady's revenge. It would have been like the Star Wars saga where Anakin Skywalker turns on everyone and now he gets his payback. And that would have been Tom Brady getting his payback on the undefeated team.
Because he went
undefeated. That storyline would have been awesome.
Randy Moss. They did lose the last game of the season. They were 14-2. They did lose to the Chargers because...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that was because they benched everybody.
All right.
If they beat the Raiders going for undefeated... I don't know how... if I'm a team, I probably would bench my guys. Going undefeated or going 15-1 is tough because it's hard. You need to get that loss out of the way. There's obviously no team... I think maybe... I don't even... Did the Dolphins, the only undefeated team besides the Patriots, they ended up winning, right? Back in the day. So, it's rare that a team even goes undefeated, but it's you got to get that loss out of the way. There is a flaw in every team. If I'm a coach, if I'm a player, let's get that loss. Let us find our flaws and let's work on that. And the Bucs had many losses, obviously. Not a lot, but obviously quite a few to work on that.
One to the Bears.
Chicago. Does that mean you guys kind of won the Super Bowl? I don't know. Take it as a win. Take it as a victory.
Yeah, I guess.
So
Super Bowl 55 is in the books. The offseason's coming up. We're going to see free agency start. Before we get into that, class of 2021 for the Football Hall of Fame.
yes.
Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson, Drew Pearson, Alan Faneca, Bill Nunn, John Lynch finally gets in, and Tom Flores. Peyton Manning, it's so odd to see that him and Calvin Johnson have been out of the game for 5 years. Grew up watching them throughout my childhood, and now they're just done and in the Hall of Fame. It's weird. Charles Woodson, he's always felt old in my books.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, Peyton Manning's in the Hall of Fame. Calvin, well-deserved. Put it on Twitter. Talked about it a couple weeks ago. If this was baseball voting, Calvin Johnson would not even be considered because he didn't play long enough.
Even though his numbers would have shown for it. Yeah. I mean, awesome to see. You know, I'm not going to lie to you. Some of these guys are a little bit older. We did not grow up watching, like Drew Pearson, Alan Faneca. I maybe caught some games from him, but everybody else for the most part. John Lynch was a bruiser out there, great safety. Obviously, Calvin Johnson is arguably one of the best receivers to ever do it, next to Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. Peyton Manning, at this point, anybody that is old enough to walk and talk may or may not know Peyton Manning, but we grew up watching him. Charles Woodson, who was around the league, won a Super Bowl with Green Bay back in 2010-2011 season. So definitely huge names there, and as you mentioned, if it was the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame or just the Baseball Hall of Fame, it would be a little bit different, but it's not. And you know, definitely Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson, in my eyes, are first ballot Hall of Famers.
And now for next year, could be a first ballot. We'll have to see, but Hall of Fame eligible finally, Devin Hester.
Oh,
I cannot wait. He'll get in eventually because of his impact on the game. Football's good. They actually recognize their specialists, unlike baseball with the relief pitchers.
Yeah.
But Devin Hester changed the game
always
tremendously.
Forever.
Kickoffs will never be the same without him because the rules have changed. But he was so good. And there's a couple other names. I think Andre Johnson's Hall of Fame eligible. But I'm excited. Devin Hester, especially to see people complain that he makes it in the Hall of Fame. It'll just be funny. It'll be funny to browse.
Special teams matter in the NFL, guys. They matter. The kicker is just as important as the quarterback sometimes. And the kick returner, clearly, if you can do it to start a Super Bowl and return it and start the game 7-0, that's a huge handicap right there. So I think he should get in, like you said, maybe not the first year, but it'd be interesting to see what happens and all the hate that you know, spirals from it. So
yeah, other NFL news talk. We didn't really talk about Matthew Stafford getting traded a week or so ago. Can't remember. I don't know why. I think it was just like a weekend topic, so we kind of forgot about it. But Matt Stafford traded to the Rams. Good decision. The Rams got rid of Goff, which was, I think we actually might have spoken about this. I don't know. But we're going to bring it up briefly. Went to the Rams, traded Jared Goff, a couple of first-round picks. And it's good. It should be a great decision. Matt Stafford actually knows how to read a defense, and the LA defense is amazing. So right now in the West, the Rams are probably the favorites.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be hard to say because with Arizona getting better, Seattle obviously was kind of the favorite. I mean, we even had predicted them to go pretty far. Definitely with the addition of Matthew Stafford, which I'm finally happy that I'm happy that he's finally on a contending team. I mean, Detroit obviously is just a franchise where careers don't really blossom. You don't win. So Jared Goff, maybe he does something over there, but the Rams did send 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick along with Jared Goff to the Lions for Matthew Stafford, making it worthwhile. So the Lions can capitalize on this as well. They got assets back. Matthew Stafford's getting older. His contract was expiring eventually. And why not? Why not get somebody who has been able to put up the numbers year in, year out. He puts up the numbers, the yards, the touchdowns. He does throw some picks, but I mean, that's what happens when you don't have the most, I mean, really any weapons. And he's been able to play with like Calvin Johnson and other great receivers. So he'll be able to work with this Rams receiving core. They're excellent. I'm excited to see what next year brings. It's funny that you mentioned quarterbacks because there is the Carson Wentz rumors going around currently. In the past few days leading up to the Super Bowl over the weekend, there are rumors that Carson Wentz is on a few teams' radar, including the Chicago Bears. Apparently, the Eagles are asking for an arm, a leg, and then they're also asking for the other arm and the other leg, along with a bunch of draft picks. Healy, I don't know about you. Obviously, you being a Chicago Bears fan, what's your take on Wentz? What is your take? Obviously, he had a horrible year. The numbers do not lie. But I think, personally, if I'm the Bears, maybe you don't give up multiple first-round picks, but say you offer an asset on the defense and a first-round pick, maybe the Eagles are willing on working with you. Well, do you think it's worth it?
I'm going to say it's so tough. Like, here's I was going to say no, but the dilemma is Ryan Pace kind of isn't great at drafting players.
Mm-hmm.
He's hit on a couple mid-round, like mid-draft guys, but when he goes for the number one guys or guys high in the draft, he's missed big time.
You mean Trubisky wasn't a steal in the draft?
What about Kevin White?
Kevin White, the guy who never would stay on the field?
Yeah, Kevin White. I can't think of their other picks, but Carson Wentz, he had that MVP type year in 2017 before he got hurt. He had that great Eagles team. Honestly, also another big factor too is Matt Nagy and his coaching style. If he's going to run the offense, the offensive coordinator, who's fitting in that system? His system's been absolutely trash the past couple years. And a lot of the NFL, like with quarterbacks, if you have a good system, they'll work well. I just don't think giving up that much for Wentz when the system's bad, their front office is bad, is necessarily worth it. I preferably would want them to just draft someone and take a risk. You could always draft a quarterback, and if he's bad or something, draft another one the next year or a couple years down the line if your team's bad. But with Carson Wentz, you could get him, and then there's a lot of cap room, and then that could ruin some of the signings to keep your team good when the draftee is going to be less money for maybe the same performance.
Yeah, or package something and trade up. Maybe you probably won't get Trevor Lawrence.
Or Justin Fields.
Like that's not going to happen. And I'm trying to think like in my head of different like scenarios just real quick. Like, okay, you trade for Carson Wentz. What does that do when your O-line's trash? Okay,
Nothing.
So you go and draft the O-line. Maybe you draft a stud. You draft like
but you got to trade your first round.
But you got to trade your first round. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you end up trading a couple years down the road. Maybe not this year. Maybe next year and the year after, right? Or even if you do, say somewhere you draft a stud offensive lineman. Okay, you just got the protection that Mitch Trubisky needed in the first place. And you traded all these draft picks to go get a quarterback that you had to protect in the first place.
Yeah, that's another thing. Their O-line's not good.
Yeah, and I get Trubisky doesn't have the best arm as far as accuracy. He's got a great arm. He's got the power. He can throw it deep sometimes too deep. His accuracy is bad. But, I mean, who's to say after 3 years in the league, at this point we're 4, that this next season they get him the protection. They work up a scheme that says, hey, we're going to work. This is what's going to work for you because this is the type of quarterback that you are. And I know I've been running this offense and we've been scheming up this style of offense that really wasn't suited for you because at the end of the day, you have got to suit the quarterback. You're not running an offense for the running back. You're not doing it for the receivers. They're going to run their routes. They're going to do what they do when they get the ball. But you need to make that quarterback comfortable. And I think that their offense was so up and down. You didn't know what they were going to do. There was too many dump offs, too many checkdowns. You didn't see Trubisky take off. In one game against Atlanta, he had like a 40-yard touchdown run, which at that point I was like, okay, maybe they're onto something. Maybe they realize not only does he have an arm and when he's protected can maybe make the right pass, but he can take off and run. But then we didn't see that anymore. So I don't know, and I don't think I agree with trading for Wentz, even though, is he a better quarterback statistically? Yes. The argument is Wentz got sacked like the most times in the league this past season. The Eagles don't have an offensive line. But the years before that, his touchdown to interception ratio was pretty damn good. It was almost like 3-1. So it's like a toss-up. Will the Bears getting a better quarterback, I won't say a great quarterback, a better quarterback, do anything for them if they're going to have to give up draft picks? I don't think it will.
Take up draft picks, take up cap space. They aren't going to retain Allen Robinson.
And exactly. And then who else is going? Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack. They're going to want somebody on the defense. I mean, the Eagles' defense is already good, but why not try to get what you can? Because, I mean, the Eagles at this point, they have Jalen Hurts. I feel like Jalen Hurts may, in fact, be the starter moving forward. We don't know yet. Offseason's going to happen if they retain Wentz. And then there's other teams that actually need Carson Wentz. And here's the thing. The Colts don't have a quarterback right now. I mean, who they have? Jacoby Brissett?
No.
He's not even there anymore. Like, Phillip Rivers is retiring. So you have other teams that are going to make offers for Wentz, which is going to drive his value up because there's teams that are literally so hungry for a quarterback. Colts are a playoff team. They need Carson Wentz. So I can see them trading draft picks because they have a running game. They have a few good receivers. They could use maybe another stud. The defense is obviously good. So they are missing that quarterback piece. The Bears, it just is not just a quarterback that they're missing. So would it make sense for me, being a GM or a coach, to say, hey, let's give up this package here, this Matt Stafford package, if you will, and I want him. And we're not going to worry about anything else because our defense is good and that's all we need. It doesn't work like that.
No. I thought the trade was going to go through this past weekend.
So did I.
It was going to include Nick Foles as well. And I was like, please don't. Please just don't. Don't make this move. There's already been too many trades. They did get Khalil Mack, which was cool, but that cost them a couple first-round picks in a few years. Then they went and traded for Mitch Trubisky, which we know there's a couple of quarterbacks they could have traded for in that draft class. And, man, that was terrible. So I don't like the deal with Wentz. Now, let's say they trade for Deshaun Watson and they have to give up Robert Quinn or Khalil Mack. That I'm fine with.
That's a different story.
Watson's younger. Mm-hmm. He's proven to be good. He's played well the past few years. Yeah, their team was garbage this past year, but it's not on him.
It's not him.
Their team
defense was horrible. Even with J.J. Watt in there, who actually ended up not having a bad year. I mean, their defense gave up a lot on the offense or the running game and the passing game, both. I mean, we saw the Bears started the game against them with like a 90-yard run from David Montgomery, who isn't a bad back, but it's the simple fact that that's how bad their defense was. Watson would be worth it. I would say maybe 2 first-round picks and a Robert Quinn. Maybe you give him Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack was quiet.
I think Roquan Smith was like talked about.
Oh.
And even so, defense can always be filled in. Yeah, Quinn or Roquan Smith was amazing, but like you got to score points, and that comes with the offensive end, which the quarterback is higher valued than a linebacker.
Yeah, and it's not like the Bears will not draft. That's the one thing I give Chicago. Their defense, it's not good every year, but most years it's extremely well. They draft linebackers pretty well. Leonard Floyd they let get away, who ended up having a turnaround year with Los Angeles Rams. They've had some notable picks, and they've signed some notable players. I would be willing on giving up Roquan Smith. Great player. But, I mean, that's what you got to do to get a playmaker behind center. I mean, it would be kind of awkward to trade a couple first-round picks for a guy that you could have just drafted. But that's in the past. You got to think about the future. Deshaun Watson has many years left in him. Clearly this year he balled out. I mean, his numbers weren't bad considering the circumstances. They didn't win a lot, but it happens. That would be worth it. Carson Wentz is not.
No, especially with his like injury concerns past couple years. So yeah, definitely don't want to do that. And man, we'll see. Free agency's coming up. I find it so weird. I was talking about it with a couple of friends. I find it so weird how the NFL, they do free agency before the draft. When it like in the draft, you're drafting guys that you're hoping can become good and fill in spots. And then wouldn't you want afterwards, let's say you can't hit on your drafted guys, you just then go into free agency and then pick up veterans to fill those spots? In the NFL, it's like, all right, you kind of have to take a risk. Like, do you want to take double up on this position and see, like, if, let's say, I know a lot of times it happens with the quarterback. Like, let's say the Bears, they go, all right, Mitch Trubisky isn't coming back. There's rumors of him not coming back, and he doesn't want to come back, and the Bears don't want him. Are they going to go out and maybe draft Cam Newton in case, like, they can't hit on their quarterback? Or, like, another, like, I feel like that's what teams have to go in, or they just sign the star player, and they're just like, yeah, forget this position in the draft anyways.
That's probably the best bet, I think. I disagree and I agree. I see where you're going with that. I do see where you're going with that, and that makes a lot of sense. I feel like either way, one way or the other, you kind of still have to mentally prep for that other part of the offseason. So with the it's free agents first, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, I feel like if you do free agent first, then you kind of like, you still have to rely on the scouts. It would be the same thing. If you do the draft first, then it's like, okay, now we know who not to sign. But it's one damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation, I feel like. I feel like basketball starts free agency like right after the finals. So, but basketball is a little bit different. You have 12 guys versus a team of 52, right? So, I don't know. I guess I do like, I personally like the idea of free agency happening first as a fan, only because I like that, you know, that drama, that build up. But I mean, for the Bears situation, like you mentioned, rumor is maybe Trubisky doesn't come back, and you know, do you end up trading? I feel like with free agency being first, you can kind of trade around with that. You can do sign and trades, which makes it easier before having to go into the draft. Because then this way, you know for a fact, like Trubisky is not coming back. This is our quarterback. We're not getting a quarterback in free agency, but it depends on the franchise, I guess, too. So, like the Bears, they probably aren't getting a quarterback in the draft. So,
yeah, there's a lot of options in the draft this year. I would be very surprised if they don't pick one of them. But that's pretty much it for all the football talk today. We have some big news in the baseball world. Trevor Bauer signs the highest annual deal in Major League history. Only a 3-year deal. 3 years, $105 million. First 2 years, he's getting paid $40 million. Dude, it is the Dodgers. You did not think they could get any better, and they did. They went out and got the Cy Young winner. So now it's Kershaw. You have Dustin May, who's an up-and-coming starter. You have Walker Buehler, Trevor Bauer, Tony Gonsolin. There's one other guy that is escaping my memory right now, but they are just loaded at the starting position right now. And their offense is great still. With some of the best prospects in baseball still behind them. Great deal for Bauer. He is getting paid more than he'll ever need in his lifetime, which is awesome. Good for him. And also, this isn't necessarily a huge cap hit for the Dodgers. They still have a couple years before they are going to need to start paying their players. And also, Trevor Bauer, he's taking the $80 million of the $105 during those years where they don't need to pay these guys like Bellinger, Seager,
those longer
like
contracts.
Will Smith. Yeah.
Yep.
So, very smart move. It was rumored he could have went to the Mets. It was down to those two teams, the Mets and the Dodgers. It was also kind of rumored that the third team before it went down to 2 was the Blue Jays.
Because of all the moves that they've been making.
Weird team with the Blue Jays, but yeah, they were kind of in the consideration for that. And they would have been maybe a contender, like a top team for the AL East. I don't know if they would have won, but they still would have been great. But Trevor Bauer heading to LA. What do you think?
Nuts. I was on Twitter. I saw the update. There was rumors that he was going to the Mets because of something with the social media. There was the LFGM, the Let's Go Mets. Was not the case. And he openly admitted to it. Like, that was not what that was supposed to be. He wasn't really too familiar with it. Arguably the best top 5 starter in the league right now. The contract, I would say, is very interesting. It's very interesting, and it makes sense, the contract. The amount of money, it's tough. You have to hope that he continues this success. I don't see why he wouldn't. The Dodgers, they're so smart. They are so smart. Obviously, they have a lot of money to use. They've always spent money. The Dodgers have always gone out and they've spent the money. They win the World Series, and they get better. They literally go out and get that much better. We're going to have a full season. He's going to pitch, if he's healthy, he'll start 30 games, give or take. And if he does what he did last year with the Reds, I'm expecting him to win, with that offense, 18 games. I'm expecting him to win 18 games. Even if his ERA goes up a little bit, which, I mean, it could, considering what he just did this past season. It doesn't even matter because he's going to have way more firepower on the offense than what he just had with the Reds, which they obviously had a pretty good offense too. So I was not necessarily shocked. I'm never shocked when somebody signs with the Dodgers. I did expect him. I had this weird feeling he was going to go to the Mets with the new ownership. They were making huge moves. But, I mean, going to the Dodgers is never a surprise for me.
Man, baseball season, pitchers and catchers report very soon, and then the teams report a couple weeks after. We're going to get a full season this year, which is awesome. I think expanded playoffs are coming back. Double headers are coming back as well, 7 innings. The runners on second, I don't know, but it seems like all these rules are coming back. DH in the NL, still don't know. Will it happen? I don't know, but right now, doesn't look like it. Other baseball news, Andrew Benintendi is traded to the Royals. He went to the Royals. The Mets got involved, and they got Khalil Lee, who's an outfield prospect, left-handed hitter from the Royals. And then the Red Sox got like Franchi Cordero, a couple players to be named later, and a couple minor guys. I don't know, like, it wasn't a big move for the Red Sox. I guess they were just like, you know what, Benintendi, he was our top prospect a couple years ago. He's just not panning out, and we just need to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they did. They shed some money. So he's with the Royals, which the Royals, they're a sneaky team. I could see them kind of being like the Marlins, where they could sneak into the playoffs. Their pitching staff, not as great as the Marlins, but they are going to be a scrappy team. You being a White Sox fan and watching the White Sox, it's going to be some hard battles against them this year. They're going to lose a lot of games. They could, I don't know how close they're going to come to 500, but man, every series against them is going to be tough with that lineup they're putting together. They're still in like a rebuild type of mode. Their farm system still isn't like super duper top tier. Like there isn't like a lot on the horizon to look forward to. But they're putting out a competitive team, and that's what you like to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't try to look at stats for last year. It was an off year. But the Royals weren't bad. They showed good signs. Like we were talking about some of their hitters. They have Whit Merrifield, and you know, they still have Jorge Soler, who probably is going to hit 40 home runs. You know, they have bats. The pitching is definitely their flaw. But, I mean, to go 26-34 wasn't bad, considering who really considers the Royals to ever be a contender for the next even 3 years. So with that trade, that definitely does help them. I mean, that division's tough. That division's tough. The Twins, the Indians, the White Sox. Are the Royals gonna maybe slide in as a wild card? Is there an extra wild card team? I don't really know how that's gonna work. But I mean, yeah, I'm not too worried as a White Sox fan about the Royals. I am worried that if they do get the Royals late in the season, the Royals could be a team that upsets and prevents the Sox from maybe taking the division or maybe not making the playoffs. I mean, I know the Sox are probably the favorite, one of the favorites right now in the AL, but that never pans out that way exactly. Obviously, we see what other teams around the league, so nothing set in stone. I still think the White Sox should be okay, but they are definitely something to look out for when they have that stretch against the division at the end of the season. So,
yeah, football or baseball season's pretty much here because NFL season's over. Yep. I am so excited. Man, it's going to be great talking about baseball again. But basketball news, there's like supposed to be an All-Star game. I think, when is it supposed to be? Next month?
Yeah. All-Star game is looking at March. I want to say the second week of March. They are aiming for, they're going to have the All-Star game. They want to do like a skills competition, I think. They don't really know yet, but so voting is happening right now through the 16th of February. So we have about 5-6 days-ish, if you will. Nothing is set in stone, but they are rumored, and they're progressing towards a halftime slam dunk contest, perhaps. So, which is interesting, obviously due to the circumstances and the pandemic and COVID. They're trying to makeshift and make things happen. Some All-Stars have expressed their concern. Ja Morant, LeBron James, and others don't understand why they would be forced to play in an All-Star game, which I get it. I completely get it. I don't know where I stand with that. I don't know if I'm on their side or if I'm on the other side where it's like, well, you're getting paid millions. Because it's so easy to say, well, you make millions. But then it's like you have guys like Durant who is forced to not play for over a week because of close trace contact or whatever you want to call it. But then the rest of the team is still able to play even though he's been warming up with them and playing these games. So it's kind of weird. It makes you wonder, like, what are they going to benefit outside of view time and money from that? So do I think that the players are in danger? Not any more danger than they would be in the regular season. I get where they're coming from. I get where LeBron's coming from. Ja Morant, it's like, hey, we're forced to play during this pandemic. Why force us to play in something that doesn't matter? I get that. I completely get that. And that's why I'm like, I kind of back them up a little bit.
Yeah. I feel I'm kind of with them. There's no reason to play a game that doesn't matter that could potentially affect games that do matter. We've seen multiple games postponed. We've seen multiple players have to sit out due to protocols. These guys are already seeing each other on a weekly basis on other teams, but it's not the same. You aren't going to have these guys sitting next to each other on the bench, and interacting with each other on and off the court. I just feel like mixing all these guys could potentially just ruin a bunch of teams' games. And over a game of fun. Like, yeah, I'm fine with voting All-Stars, giving players their bonus checks for being on the All-Star team, but I don't necessarily think there should be a game. Like, I'm fine with them not playing in order to keep the season going. Like, why? I don't know. I just don't know why they would do this. Obviously, it's a money aspect.
That's all it is.
NBA All-Star Game is a huge money grab. But with the players concerned, who knows? Maybe they will deny it and they'll just get other people to replace them. That could be fine.
Yeah, I mean, according to Ja Morant, they get fined if they're voted in and don't play. So it makes you wonder, but they get paid at the same time. So what do they find? Their check that they would have gotten for getting voted in? We don't know. But it's almost not even worth it. I mean, does LeBron need that money? No. How much is he really going to get fined? 0.5% of his yearly salary, if that. So yeah, I kind of back these guys. I mean, I know a lot of people on social media, they're like, well, they need to stop crying, they need to go, they're making millions, like, people are at home, give them something to watch, and all these other horrible excuses as to why they should play when guys are not able to play as it is when they are with their own team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you take me over to, this all-star game where there's probably going to be 15 on each side. Maybe. I don't know how they're going to do it this year. And now they're all close contact, and now they're all going to go back to their own team. Obviously, there's teams there with no all-stars. Maybe. Washington, well, they have Bradley Beal. He'll be an all-star. I'm trying to think of a team that would be okay, but it could affect the regular season. What do they have, an extended week off after all-star break?
Yeah.
What do they do? I mean, we already see teams getting postponed last minute. We had a game, I forgot what it was. It was like a Utah game or a Denver game a couple weeks ago, get postponed minutes before tip-off. Minutes. Because of close trace contact. And they're like, nope, we can't do this. We got to postpone the game. Oh. Well, if you could do that, then why even play this game? I get it. I get both sides, but I feel for the All-Stars that are like, hey, it's not necessary.
Yeah, I'm fine with not watching the game. It's cool. It won't affect my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And being mad at the NBA for not doing it is just selfish on my part.
Or, hear me out, NBA, Adam Silver. Have a dunk contest with 5 or 6 guys, remote somewhere, right? They were able to do horse during during the start of the pandemic. So why not go take guys in a stadium with a few fans, maybe no fans, do a dunk contest and have the judges remote give their score.
You could do a 3-point contest that way too.
You could do a 3-point contest that way in a different stadium. Why do you have to go to the city that was elected the All-Star game instead of pushing everything back a year? Because you have the power to do that. Why not do this? And you're still going to get TV ratings. You're still going to get it. But instead of doing the All-Star game, that doesn't matter. These guys are bouncing the ball off the backboard every other play. Guys are tossing it up for Giannis to go jump over somebody. Like, it's stupid. Is it fun? Is it entertaining? Yes. Do we need it? No. As a fan of the game, I'd rather make sure that the regular season's intact.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather they pick 2 or 3 different stadiums. They get these guys together. They're like, hey, bring your families, whatever. Bring like whoever. And we're going to test. We'll do the normal testing that we would before a game. And we're going to test you before the dunk contest. You guys are going here for the dunk contest. You guys are going here for the 3-point contest. Or the 3-point contest, you'll be the next day. And do the skills competition. But don't have the All-Star game when you guys have 30 guys lined up, ready to play, all from all over every state, or every state, that has a team, risking the regular season immediately after that. So hear me out. That's all I'm saying.
In other NBA news, Kevin Durant, he still hasn't been able to play since his protocol stuff. Bradley Beal still doing all right with the Wizards. The Bulls right now destroyed the Pelicans. Zach LaVine went off. Hope Zach LaVine's an all-star. If he's not, I'm going to be very disappointed. Zach LaVine dropped 46 points today.
Wow.
And 9 3-pointers. Awesome stuff. Kobe White dropped 30. But, man, I feel like every week the Bulls are either really good or they're really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we talked about with Billy Donovan. We're going to get the ups and the downs. What we didn't expect is Lauri Markkanen to be hurt for a couple more weeks now. Wendell Carter to be out. So it's kind of nice, though, that we are seeing Denzel Valentine play. This is the most we've seen him play probably in his whole career in the NBA. And he stepped it up a few times already. We get to see Pat Williams a lot more now because of Markkanen being out and Wendell Carter. That's 2 huge positions. We have Thad Young stepping up, Daniel Gafford. The only other true big guy that can play would be our wing, Pat Williams, who doesn't play the power forward, but he's so good defensively that he's going to step up to play that 4 or that 3 while other guys step up. So he's playing 34 minutes today. 2 blocks, 2 steals. I'll take it. Played him on my FanDuel. Make sure you guys grab him while he's cheap. Valentine at 16 points. Valentine's been shooting pretty well. Last game wasn't too hot, but a couple games before that he did pretty well. So it's nice that these guys are hurt. Obviously, we don't want anybody to get hurt, but now we start to see the other pieces, the glue pieces, if you will. Versus, we weren't going to see that if Markkanen's out there playing 35 minutes. Wendell's playing his 30, 35 minutes. We didn't even see Gafford play. Gafford's starting to maybe blossom. He did get bullied a couple games ago against Nikola Vucevic, who's arguably one of the best centers in the league right now. Top 10, for sure. But Gafford had 3 blocks in the game tonight up against a Pelicans team that has Zion Williamson bodying everybody in the paint. He's been having a hell of a year so far. So, yes and no to the question that wasn't asked. We are going to keep rolling with the punches. As Bulls fans, we will keep rolling with the punches. Zach LaVine should be an all-star, though.
Definitely. If he's not, this is going to be like a Bradley Beal type thing last year.
Oh, yeah.
But LaVine, he should. I think in the public eye right now, one, he's from Chicago, so Chicago would probably back him up on the votes. 2, he's been an impact in multiple games this year, hitting big shots. So he's been on social media in front of all the people, like showing off. So it's not like Beal where he could put up like 35 points a game, but it just comes throughout the game and they win by like 10 or they lose by like 10. LaVine, it's like, no, he puts up like 35 and he hit like a game-tying shot with 2 seconds to go, and it's happened multiple times this year. He's just been playing very well. So next week, we'll talk about the All-Star voting. Hopefully they reveal the votes. I know the voting isn't the end-all, be-all. There's like 3 different categories. I think it's the player voting, there's the fan voting, and then there's another voting, which those are the larger percentages of who gets into the All-Star game. It might be a coach voting.
I think it's like coaches or GMs, something like that. Yeah.
So we'll see next week on that. Pitchers and catchers report sometime next week, so we might talk about that as well. Football, if there's any news on that. But next few weeks might be a little weak on the podcast topics. NFL, you need to come through within the next week. Let's go. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Standing Room Only podcast. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you download that episode. It's the best way to show support. You could always delete it if you don't need it on your iPhone or whatever, or your whatever device you're using. But it's the best way where we can track our statistics, so it'll help us out a lot. Follow us on our social media pages at SROnlyPod, Instagram and Twitter. We do have a YouTube channel as well. Just search up the podcast. You'll be able to find it. On our personal pages, I am at the Healy6 on Twitter and Instagram.
And I'm iGoose with 4 O's. Don't ask why. Instagram, Twitter, Twitch.
We will see you guys next week.